Hello, and welcome to LaSalle University's Ladder Family Center series of programs. I am Dr. Carol Petrilo, Assistant Professor and Director of External Relations at the Ladder Family Center. Ladder is the acronym for LaSalle Autism and Developmental Disabilities Education Resources. The Ladder Family Center is unique in that it is supported by an interdisciplinary team that includes the following disciplines on campus: education, psychology, speech language hearing pathology, marriage and family therapy, and social work. Paramount to the mission of community service for our students serving as interns in various disciplines. Currently, Ladder is funded through the Widener Memorial Foundation and HP Energy Resources. We are regularly in the process of welcoming other grants and contributions to address our initiatives. Ongoing each month and held at the Ladder Family Center are a series of workshops directed to the needs of the families. Available also are individual and family therapy, marriage and couples therapy, speech and language services for the children, technology accessibility and training for families, social work, and respite services. Our plans for the future include expansion of the programs into more days, evenings, and weekends, expanded respite care, and transition programs from school to work and businesses, as well as colleges and universities. I sincerely hope I have provided for you an overview of the Ladder Family Center and its critical attention to the special needs of families. One of our community outreach programs includes our series of LaSalle television broadcasts. And today, our emphasis will highlight effective strategies to use with children on the autism spectrum in classrooms. And in future broadcasts, we will highlight effective strategies in the home environment. And when we return, our presenters, Ashley Lampson and Brianna Bronstein, will lead an informative discussion. And at the conclusion of our presentation, please note the Ladder Family Center's contact information. And as always, certainly we welcome your involvement.
From our campus to the city of Philadelphia, tune in and watch because we know you will love LaSalle TV.
Hungry for LaSalle TV? Check us out on YouTube. Follow us on Facebook. Check out our Twitter. And continue watching LaSalle TV.
There's something for everyone at LaSalle TV.
I watch LaSalle TV.
I watch LaSalle TV.
The baseball team watches LaSalle TV.
I watch LaSalle TV.
I watch LaSalle TV.
Miro televisión de LaSalle.
Vedo io la televisione LaSalle.
Я дивлюсь ласальську телевізію і дуже вона мене цікавить.
我睇電視.
And you can too. Follow us, like us, and watch us on LaSalle TV.
Welcome back, everyone, and thanks so much for joining us today. My name is Ashley Lamson. I'm the director of a local preschool program for children with autism. Prior to that position, I spent several years educating children with autism in Philadelphia. This is my colleague, Brianna Bronstein. Brianna is also an educator. She has been educating children with autism in a local intermediate unit for several years now. And Brianna and I are here today to chat with you a little bit about evidence-based practices for educating children with autism. So I think it's really important when talking about evidence-based practices to use for children with autism is starting with the research. So there are two noted publications in the field. There is the National Autism Center's National Standards Report, as well as the National Professional Development Center's Evidence-Based Practice Report. Both of these research studies were conducted completely independently, but what's really interesting is that their findings have been remarkably similar. And what these organizations have done is scoured other single case research studies out there to determine really what are evidence-based practices for children with autism. And what they have found is a number of practices, strategies, techniques to utilize with children with autism. What's interesting is that all of the strategies that they have found all fall under the umbrella of applied behavior analysis. Now, being in the field, you'll hear applied behavior analysis quite often. People also use the acronym, which is ABA. So I think it's important that we kind of discuss what that is. ABA, or applied behavior analysis, is a set of principles that governs behavior. Behavior being anything that human beings do. So walking is a behavior. In regards to children, having a tantrum is a behavior. Completing math problems is a behavior. So they're all behaviors. And what ABA allows us to do as professionals as well as families is to start off by understanding the behavior and then putting strategies and interventions in place to either decrease maladaptive behaviors or behaviors that we don't want to see, as well as increase socially significant behaviors, behaviors we do want to see. And again, that can be anything. That can be verbal behavior, having a discussion. That can be more cognitively involved behaviors like completing math problems. But ABA really helps us to first, of course, and most importantly, understand the behavior and then put strategies in place to alleviate those behaviors. So we're going to start off today. Brianna's going to share with us a little bit about visual supports and how they serve our children with autism.
Right. Okay, so we have just some examples of some visual supports you may see in a typical class that supports children with autism.
Great.
There are many different things that you can have in your class to use with your children or that you could even use at home. Something that you may see as a typical example in a class would be something called a choice board. So a choice board is based on the individual needs and likes and wants of the child, and this specific one shows the likes of the child as well as some things that they need to request. So visuals are great to use to initiate communication skills for the child, as well as giving them the choice in their decisions, whether it be during maladaptive behaviors or during any other time of the day where they may need to make a choice. So it could be something like, I want to go for a walk when they're feeling frustrated, or it could be something like, I'm hungry, can I have a snack? Or something like, can I use the bathroom? Or they may be requesting something that is reinforcing to them, such as the computer or juice or other things like that.
That's great. And what I think is really important about this strategy is, of course, we know that a key deficit, a core deficit in children with autism is communication. So a tool like this allows them to use visual supports, which are often our children's strengths, to their advantage. So again, it allows them to communicate, but it also gives them some control over their environment and tends to lessen anxiety since they're able to communicate effectively with their teachers or family members.
Right. And one of the things we were also discussing is that when children do have a difficult time expressing their needs, it may be also difficult for them to express their feelings, whether it be emotional or physical. If they're in pain, they may not be able to tell the adults or their peers how they feel. So this is something else that could be useful that says, I know my body parts, but it can also be used to say, hey, I have a stomach ache, and touch the picture of a belly. Or, oh, my head really hurts, and touch the picture of a head. Or even if I fell and I hurt my knee, something there. But it could also be used, again, for emotions. Some children with autism may not be able to express their emotions, and using visuals like these would show the different emotions. It could be, Ashley, how do you feel? Well, I feel happy today, and they're pointing happy. But like we said, it could also be used as a teaching tool to show children what this expression looks like and how to show that.
Great.
And some other ones that you maybe see in a classroom is something that would be implemented into a morning routine, such as morning meeting or morning work time or whatever it is. And it's another visual that would just show, like, if you're saying hello to a student and they're not able to express that hello back, they may be able to point again to the visual saying, hello, how are you? I'm fine. My turn. How do you feel? Happy, tired? Again, things of that nature.
Good. And I think, Brianna, if I could, something like this also, like Brianna mentioned, it's concrete, it's simple, it speaks to our students' strengths. And of course, it's a support, right? So it's a visual support to help them in communication, but it also becomes a teaching tool. So you can use these really basic, concrete, visual representations, which is essentially what they are, of emotions, and use them to guide your teaching of what does happy look like? What does happy mean? What does sad look like? And what does it mean? So these are supports, but also they become teaching tools for our students as well.
Right, and like we said, it's important to use these tools when the child may need assistance in them, but it's also good to have out in your classroom at all times to facilitate that learning and provide an example. So something like this is a calm down checklist. So it's good to have for the child when they're showing either maladaptive behaviors or when they're not, just to show this is what I do when I'm upset, or this is different ways to show that I am feeling better. So, you know, different choices of asking for a break or things like that. But it's good to have in the classroom at all times so the child can refer to that when necessary.
Good. Well, and I think it's really important to note at this point that these visual supports can actually become our child's voice, right? So we need, if we're going to teach how to use these sort of tools, they need to be readily available for our children to use anytime that they need to use them,
right.
Or anytime that they need to express some sort of feeling or emotion or want or need to an adult that's around. Another great example, I think, with this sort of visual support is, so it's a calm down checklist, like Brianna had mentioned, and it offers what's called replacement behaviors. So if you have a child who becomes easily frustrated and then may throw a chair or engage in tantrum-like behaviors because they're frustrated, what this would allow us to do is to teach them, okay, yes, you are frustrated. It's okay to be frustrated. It's okay to be upset. But these are some appropriate behaviors that we can use to replace the throwing of the chair or to replace the tantrum.
Right.
So we're teaching the children appropriate behaviors to engage in throughout the school day or throughout their home life as well. Great. And I think that leads us into a discussion about functional routines. So functional routines kind of piggyback really nicely with visual supports. Functional routines are exactly that, a routine that, that a professional or a family member, a parent say, were to put in place in order to teach some kind of functional skill. A functional skill is a skill that helps our children navigate through the day. So an example may be an arrival routine at school. So if you're a classroom teacher and you want to implement a consistent arrival routine, then it may be walk into the classroom, hang bag, hang coat, check schedule, transition to circle time. What's really important with functional routines is that they are consistent, reinforcing for the child, so you're reinforcing the child for engaging in and being successful throughout the routine,
right.
As well as providing those visual supports like we mentioned as well, which are really important for our kids. So again, when implementing functional routines, you want to be consistent with children. You want to slowly wean off of your prompts. So in the beginning, we may be heavily prompting the child to follow through with the routine. We want to slowly wean off so that we're working towards independence. And you want to provide them with the supports they need to be successful in that routine.
Right.
Great. Okay, well, we're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we have some more strategies to share with you.
TV viewers, are you bored? Are you tired of the same old shows? Having thousands of channels to watch, but there's nothing there? Tired of sitting by yourself on your old mama's striped couch? Sitting in your room by yourself, watching someone who resembles your grandfather? Yeah, I know. I used to be just like you. By now, all hope is lost. You're flipping through channels, wondering what to watch. Boring, 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 boring. Wait, what's this? LaSalle TV. It's new, it's bold, it's great, it's not your ordinary TV.
In LaSalle University's communication department, students learn to think and do.
Every semester, communication students create and implement public relations plans for local nonprofit organizations.
And journalism students produce Germantown Beat, an online news source for the local community.
It's great that we can apply what we learn in the classroom in our community.
Philadelphia is the nation's 4th largest media market and has 4 major sports teams.
Being in a major media market allows us to gain great professional experience through internships and co-ops.
The Communication Center is home to the university's cable station.
LaSalle TV reaches over 350,000 homes in Philadelphia and airs mostly student-produced programming.
Our communication department is ranked in the top 10 in North America for relational communication research.
But keeping with the tradition of the De La Salle Christian Brothers, teaching students comes first.
Think, do with LaSalle Communication. Check us out on Facebook and Twitter.
Welcome back, everyone. My name is Ashley Lamson. I'm here with Brianna Bronstein. We've been having a great discussion about evidence-based and effective strategies to utilize with children with autism, both in the home and in the community as well as in classrooms. Just to recap, we talked a little bit earlier about the research that exists when educating children with autism, which is really important to when you're making decisions regarding effective strategies to start with the research. We also talked a little bit about applied behavior analysis, what ABA is and how it helps us to understand our students' behavior, as well as put strategies and techniques in place to alleviate some of those difficult behaviors and increase some of those positive behaviors. We touched briefly on 2 effective strategies. So we talked about visual supports as well as functional routines, and we're going to continue that conversation now.
Right.
Brianna, do you want to chat a little bit about token economies?
Yep. Okay, so again, we just have a couple of examples here. We'll start from something very simple to something a little more in-depth.
Okay.
So here's one example of a token economy. This is what we would call a penny board. So very simple what it says. You use pennies to reinforce the child. So depending on the child, you would have it individualized for that student to say their name here. So this was Johnny's token board, and he's working for whatever it may be. A choice of working on the computer or going for a walk or a food reinforcer, whatever it may be.
Okay.
And the reinforcement can be something that is very frequent and immediate. So if the child needs a lot of reinforcement at an early age or early stages of this, it may be, the child gets a token for sitting down. And then the child may get a penny for showing quiet hands at the table. And then they may get a token for writing their name. And then they may be getting reinforced at the very end of that for successfully completing all 5 of the token intervals. This can be implemented, like I said, very frequently or in a longer term, depending on the needs of the student at that time.
Great.
And this is something, like we said, very simple to make if you want to use it at home.
Sure. Yeah, it looks like you just use some cardstock and lamination.
Right.
It's fairly simple to create. I think it's also important to note here, Brianna, that this is a skill that you teach the children, right? So you wouldn't want to implement something like this unless the child has seen it before and has used it before and you explicitly taught the child how to use it, correct?
Yes.
Great.
So then we have some other examples of the same thing of a token economy. This one is a little more individualized for the student. So this particular student really loves trains. So something to make it really reinforcing for the child, it says, the conductor is working for. So there's a picture of a train, and you can explain to the child, like, you're the conductor, like, what are you working for? And of course, again, we want to give the child a choice for the reinforcer. We don't want to have them work for something that they're not reinforced for at that time.
Sure.
So even though the child may really like the computer, maybe today he doesn't feel like going on the computer, or maybe he already was on the computer for an hour. So it's not going to be very reinforcing at that time. So it's always important to have choices. So this choice is the computer, but then on the back of it, you can also have different choices for the child at that time. So this could be working for playing with their cars and trucks, going for a walk around the building or outside, or if they really like chocolate milk, And again, these are the tokens that you would be using. So again, for any time the child is successfully completing the task, whether it's something as simple as sitting down, or if it's something a little more in depth as completing their worksheet or cutting or answering a question each time, again with the Velcro, they're just getting a little thumbs up here. So that's another example here. And then this one is a little more advanced, I guess you could say, for a child who may be, working for a longer period of time. So maybe for an older student, and it says, if I follow the rules, which are, and then it shows the rules. So this is, again, stems back to our visuals of having the rules there for the child at all times, so they know what they're referring to and what rules they have to follow. So it's just something as simple as sitting at my desk, listening to the teacher, being quiet, and doing my work. So if I follow all these rules, I can get, so this child wants to work for the iPad. So again, this one's a little, it can just be used with a dry erase marker every time. It could change. You can erase it and draw a picture if you want. The child likes to draw a picture. They can draw a picture of what they want to work for. Really make it reinforcing for the child.
Great.
And this one has 6 stars, which is a little more of a longer interval of time.
Okay.
So the goal would be to have the child wean off of the very constant and frequent reinforcement to more of an extended amount of time of reinforcement.
That's great. I also think it's really important to notice here, and I think a lot of times there's some critiques with systems like this. I think some folks think that the child might become reliant on a system like this, but you would never implement or use a token economy with a child without the goal of eventually weaning them off of it, right? So in this example, yes, perhaps the child is reinforced after 10 minutes or so, or whatever the interval of time is that they're being reinforced. But you're going to work to lengthen that. So eventually the child will be reinforced at the end of the class period, then at the end of the school day, maybe then at the end of the week. So I think systems like this are really effective, and you just always have the goal of weaning the child off of it and fostering independence at the same time. Yeah, that's great. I think it's also important for us to have a discussion, Brianna, about, because you mentioned the word reinforcement several times throughout, and we've mentioned it throughout this entire discussion. What is reinforcement? And I think people often confuse reinforcement with rewards or reward systems. And while they might be fairly similar, there's also some striking differences. So for example, you may think that a reward is a sticker, right? So at the end of the class period, you give your child a sticker. Positive reinforcement is a little more scientific than that. So reinforcement in terms of ABA and understanding behavior would be the addition of something and it increases the likelihood that the child will engage in that behavior again in the future. So going back to the reward example, if the child is not truly reinforced by the sticker, then they're not likely to engage in that behavior again in the future. So when you're using terms like positive reinforcement, it's really important that you're understanding the underlying research behind it, and really understanding that in order to reinforce a behavior, you have to be, it has to increase the likelihood of the behavior occurring again in the future. Okay, why don't we spend a little bit of time now talking about task analysis. Task analysis is another effective strategy I'm sure you're using in your classroom every single day. A task analysis essentially is breaking down a task into small baby steps or small parts. So an example may be a hand washing routine. Right, rather than say to our child with autism who may have difficulty learning things in large chunks, rather than saying to them, wash hands, we might say, let's implement our hand washing routine, right? So we go over to our task analysis and it's broken down into steps. So for example, we're going to approach the sink and then turn on the water, use soap, dry our hands, those sorts of things. So task analysis can be really effective with our early learners, with children who need to learn things in small baby steps, small discrete type steps. And again, it really works to alleviate behaviors. So rather than give the prompt to a child, time to wash hands, they have no idea what you're referring to, so then they have a tantrum or they become easily frustrated. It really helps to support our kids in that way. I think it also works, just like visual supports and all the other strategies that we're talking about today, to alleviate anxieties in our kids. So if they don't know what's expected of them, if they don't know what comes next, their anxieties rise. And that's really when you do tend to see quite a bit of behaviors in our children. But if we're putting the supports in place in their environment to help them be successful, things like visual supports and a task analysis where you're breaking it down and we're being proactive for them, then it really helps to alleviate behaviors or avoid them altogether. Okay, let's chat briefly about social stories, another really effective strategy, and I know you brought an example today.
Yes, so this is just a small example that you could even keep hanging up in your classroom of a social story. So a social story can be used to really kind of piggyback on any of these as something, as a support for the child to break down, whether it be social norms or other routines, and it just provides, again, a sense of predictability and routine in a child's life, whether it be something learning how to say hi to a friend or whether it's, taking a trip to the mall. It's good to have that predictability. So this is one that's about body space. So some of our children and students may not understand, personal body space and may just need more explanation. So this is just a quick little story that says body space. Sometimes I stand or sit too close to people. This can make my friends upset or bother them. I will try to give them more personal space and leave space between us. So we have our visuals and just another way to really, break it down for our kids and show them.
This is excellent. Includes the visual supports like you mentioned, as well as extremely concrete, to the point. And I think for our children with autism to tie in the functional routines a little bit, it really should become part of your functional routines in the classroom.
Right.
If you have a child that has difficulty with body space, you might review it in the morning before the school day starts or before recess when they're very likely to be engaged with a number of peers out in the recess yard or whatever it may be. So I really think it ties in all of the strategies and techniques we've talked about. Okay, well, thanks so much. I had a great discussion with you today, and I appreciate you joining me. If you're interested in the Ladder Center, please reach out to the call-in line or through the website. Thank you again.